Hello, everyone. This is Paula Robin and Susie Anderson, and we are life coaches. And each week we get into a deep dive conversation in our mastermind. And so we thought it might benefit you to hear and sit in on some of our conversations. So today we are going to talk about the large systems that run our countries and our world, and how that's changing and how that's affecting us, and what we can do about that to make some changes and perhaps see things in a different light. So if we talk about systems that run our lives, our countries, we talk about our governments, our schools, our medical systems. These are large systems that were set up that were beneficial for us when they began. And they were set up in a format that served many people. But times have changed. Maybe some are antiquated or out of date and some are not. And so when we look at those big systems, we believe that some of those are changing and they're not serving what they needed to in today's terms for what people need to experience. So it's time for change. But thinking of the systems, Susie, can you give us maybe an overview of what we're talking about here?
Sure, a quickie. I think we all are part of multiple systems. Some were created years ago, centuries ago, others more recently. We've also created some of our own systems, and they all are being adjusted because of what's going on in our world, and also because we know there's a better way a lot of times than what exists. Some people are of the opinion that we should change everything all at once, which is way too much for anyone to handle and process. Some think we should change minimally because they like it the way it is and they don't want to work on it. Most of us are in the middle somewhere. And I'm thinking, instead of focusing on all that is negative and wrong about what's happening in our world today, especially the pandemic, we can up our game by focusing on the light and the possibility and the expansion of keep what's working, what's good, and then enhance and change what's not so much. And it's interesting because we've all heard the thing about crisis is an opportunity for those who are willing to look at it that way. Same thing's happening, but different folks are getting different things out of it. It's kind of like fortune cookies when you get them in the restaurants. Everybody kind of laughs, but they want to read theirs and they want to read it out loud and they want to hear everybody else's.
Yeah.
And we all are in this together in a lot of ways, more than we have been maybe ever, because some things are collapsing and some are being invented out of ashes that are working great. One example is I was listening to the news last night, and one of the big three automakers in the United States has announced that by the year either 2040 or 2050, they plan to go all electric vehicles. That's very threatening for the people that have to do with gas companies, pipelines. But it's very exciting for the people that are concerned about the environment and dependence on other countries. So will that be a change? Will that be a system that turns on a dime? Probably not, but will it turn in sections? Yeah, it will. And to me, it's exciting to think that's big picture, but we're kind of all in a big picture and we all have our own little snapshot views. So what would you think?
Well, yeah, that's an idea of a system changing. So that's the old mindset of fossil fuels and using gas and oil to using electricity. And like you said, that causes friction because of the change. So how do we shift gears? If we're in a vehicle, we have to shift to get in from park to reverse, or the old style, we had to shift from first to second gear or third gear. How do we shift into this new mindset, new paradigm of a whole new system? It seems like such a huge task and overwhelming that it's not possible, because it's taking away from some in order to gain for others. And how do we meet in the middle and be okay with it? Like with this virus that we have going on, we were just thrown into it. We didn't have a choice. Our cities were put on lockdown, our businesses were put on lockdown. We were told to stay in our homes, wear masks, be careful. Some of us watched people get very ill, some of us didn't. But with that, that was a big change and a big shift for some. It made more work for the medical industry. It made more work for the businesses that were trying to stay engaged and now adapt to these to these cleanliness rules, and keeping people safe, and asking their customers, patients to wear the safety gear that they would normally wear. So we've been shifted already into this paradigm. For some of us, it's made us really sad and depressed and uncomfortable. And if we can find something on the other side that's going to be valuable for us, can we start to see it differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it has to do with our perspective,
Oh,
how we see the world, and from where we're at the moment. I have noticed that some people are so invested in the past, they won't invest anything in the future.
oh, interesting.
And others are invested in the present, being realistic. And then some are thinking of the future, like this car company. But what we choose to invest is not just money, it's time, energy, belief, support, backing whatever new things come our way. And I find that children and youth in some ways do better with thinking forward. I was listening to a little 9-year-old rap artist last night, and she was speaking wisdom far beyond her elders about some of the foolishness that's been going on, some of the pain, the sorrow, the reasons for it. And she is so bent on changing the world from her perspective. She says, I'm a little girl rapper, but I've got power. And I want to share it with other people because they've got power. Instead of thinking about all the stuff that doesn't work. And so a lot of people have been filming her. She's lives in DC. So she's been around all the monuments and the fences that some are still up. She's seen things. Her father was knocked down a few weeks ago by accident. And then later she found out it wasn't by accident. So she's talking about that. She said, we can do better. We've got to do better. And if we each do something that's better than yesterday as a group, we do move forward. We do have that power, like you're talking about. What's it going to take to make these shifts? It's going to take a lot. But it's already taken a lot to get in the messes we're in and the solutions we're finding. I mean, think of the billions literally invested in time, effort, and energy to get a vaccine up. And now we have 2 viable ones and 2 more shooting the gaps trying to get ready. That took a lot of 24/7s. But people, because it was so valuable, they did it. And everybody was pretty much on board. There's a few that weren't. But what a miracle that things that used to take in that venue years a few months. So there's great power in people. They just have to tap into it with their attitude, with their desire, their perspective. If they can see a future and disinvest in the past, it's already done. There's great hope.
That's wonderful format to even consider. Is the time and energy being invested in either, oh gosh, this is terrible and I'm scared, hiding in my house, or I'm following the rules, and while I'm doing that and trying to stay safe for me and others, that I can move into this new mindset of what else is possible. That's what I'm hearing you say. And
Oh, yeah.
so I watched an interview of a researcher and scientist who doesn't like all the chaos that's going on right now and all the restriction with businesses, and watching the airline industry crumble. Aren't supposed to fly much, and it's just not the normal business format. And so she and many other people working with her are formatting an airline where they are setting the rules rather than those that have always set the rules in the past. So I guess when I hear that, I consider that, what if we're moving from, a group of 1,000 that used to guide all of us to everybody having a voice in guiding all of us? And if everybody has a voice, then now we have different choices to be heard and collectively work together in collaboration to move us all forward. Because I mean, let's be honest, there are some people right now that have doubled their income in the billions. And then there are many who they have no money. They're waiting for the government to say, oh, here's a little check for $600, or here's a little check. So there is a disparity, there is a difference, and we have pretended or agreed or accepted that that was okay. Is it? Consider that. Is it?
Evidently not, because people are being more open about their feelings and thoughts, about not having choices and options. And sometimes that happens during crises. People realize, hey, there's got to be a better way. This is not working for most of us.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been laid off, and I've noticed my own attitude go up and down, and others. And I've talked with some people who totally expect that they're entitled to an answer, and they just sit at home and have nothing in the equation about what they can do. And some because they feel disempowered.
Yeah.
And others because they're used to taking but not giving. It's all over the map that way. And then I see people who, struggling with their own issues, are stepping up to the plate and taking massive action that is helping somebody else besides themselves. And I am stunned by the creativity, the compassion, the insight that comes when people say, enough's enough. We can do better than this, and we need to start right now and not wait to be rescued, when in fact they're right. A rescue isn't coming that's going to last very long, because we have to rescue ourselves and each other by setting up systems that are more functional, more people friendly, more user friendly. And some people think it's a matter of resources. And someone I respect very much, one of our life coach trainer, said it's not a problem of distribution of resources, it's more of greed. And that has stuck with me, and I know it's stuck with you, and maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's distribution so much as it's the distribution of the resources and the greed of holding some of those or those resources. I don't know where they are. I don't know what's available, but I do know that if there are just a handful of people or a small number of people, what they always say, 1/10 of 1% hold 90% of the wealth or 95 or whatever that number is. Why are we okay with that? And I don't encourage any rough evil behavior because of that, but I do encourage people to start awakening and imagine, what if that started to flow? What if all that they're holding, trying to help us with our lives, what if we need to flip that and they can start allowing that to flow, and we can start meeting them saying, okay, I'm starting to feel empowered here, I have some resources, perhaps I can create some of these systems. And if we think about the systems of our governments and of our education and medical systems, they're huge. They're so huge. Where do we even start? Well, you and I usually start with people with, what's your dream? What is your vision? And we guide people into creating that vision. So if we can create that vision for these new systems, perhaps we build them from the grassroots up instead of the top down. We've lived in the system of the top down direction and resource funnels for all time. But if we can move it to the other route where it's, grassroots people on the ground, just in the cities and anywhere, but we have a say so on what we want the systems to look like, what we want them to serve. Would we handle them differently? That's a great place to start right there.
Yeah. And it's kind of ironic we went full circle, because how did all these systems start in the first place? Grassroots, people deciding they wanted something better, changing the rules, changing the systems. But I think what's happened is we get comfortable and complacent
Mm.
and think they last forever. And that's not how it works, because when people grow and develop and stretch, it requires better, newer systems. And so I think very much growing from the bottom up instead of the top sprinkling down. We're seeing more and more of that, even just survive, and in some cases thrive during the pandemic, where you see businesses banding together to make things happen, sharing resources.
Right.
I've heard of some that share kitchens, because 10 of them all individually can't keep them open, but if they have 2 or 3 and they share the use of those kitchens to do takeout, voila, things change. They're not thriving, there's a few, but they're surviving, whereas the other way, belly up, that's it.
Yeah.
And I think the more people feel like they have a voice, like you're talking about earlier, the more they want to and are able to step in and be part of the solution instead of the problem.
Yeah, being part of the solution, I think, is a big key. And not all of us are going to be capable of that. We get that. We understand that. We all come from different levels of capability, knowledge, understanding, education. But it takes a village to build the village. And it starts with one person or 2 people or however many. But so the whole format of all of this is understanding the systems, that they're changing. It's time for change. And what can each of us do about that? Do we have any power? Yes, we do. And our power is to start imagining how we want that to be on the other side. I mean, you have worked with foster kids in the past? Did you like the system that they were in, that they were just thrown from house to house to house and not always taken care of? And and accounted for.
Now it was a painful time for everybody because the system was, quote, they would say broken, and I thought it never was fixed in the first place. It was an attempt to meet a need with inadequate resources and maybe not the exact right resources. And yet I also, in my career, saw some hope as people realized what we've got is not. It's nowhere close to what could be. And they started taking small actions, but nonetheless calculated actions about how to better serve the person as a person and not as a number.
Yeah.
And I saw great effort and a lot of success when people would get grounds down to the very bottom of the matter and then start saying, well, what could we do today to change this one element that would make a difference? Can we change the requirements of who can support these kids? Can we change how much we give them so they can better support them? That things went on that were wonderful and are still going on. Children are being given good homes, but not near enough. And of all the resources in the world, aren't our children the most important? And yet, where does most of our effort and money and time go? Not there.
Right. And if we look at where, the like our United States budgets go towards security. And so are we secure? Is it that expensive to keep us secure? I don't know. I don't have those answers, but I believe that's a perfect example right there, I guess, of shifting resources and changing the system. There has to be a balance of those who believe that we are compromised and need to be protected or protect everybody around the world versus those who believe, can we redirect some of that money to take care of humanity and people and children? Yeah, children are our greatest resource because I'm not going to be here forever, but there's a generation behind me and a generation behind them. And if I can make sure that they're taken care of on a new level, then I have changed the system. So perhaps, this whole conversation today is about changing how we see the systems and awakening to can they be done differently? Can they be done in a more effective manner that can help humanity, help progression, bring us back to some empowerment, get the resources out there that can help people. I am on a food council in my community, and it amazes me that people go hungry. It saddens me. I grew up around a lot of people. I had several friends actually that, they were lucky to have bread or popcorn for dinner sometimes. And that's sad to see and sad to say. But why does that happen? Because we have parks that we water. We have golf courses that we water so that people can play and walk somewhere and have it be beautiful. And I do appreciate the parks. I do appreciate the golf courses. But can we utilize those to grow some apple trees or some nut trees? Or, our group actually had our community build edible gardens. And within those edible gardens, they shifted resources. They're watering anyway. They were flower gardens and they switched them to food. And our community, it was new this year, so the community wasn't totally familiar with, I can go over there and pick a tomato and eat it? That's okay. So we have to re-educate people on this new system that can support them. And we just had little gardens as a pilot program this year or last year, but we're going to expand those. So there's little things that we can do to help people and to change these systems and to break the mold. We're breaking the mold. Let's break the mold. And that's exciting to me, but that was a dream somebody, had, and it makes sense. If you have green parks, why can't you have green food?
Exactly. And because it's a different vision than what we've been used to traditionally. And a lot of people feel safer with traditional routes because it does take effort to change. But in that case, that wasn't a huge fix. It was just looking at it differently. I know where I grew up, they have huge community gardens, huge, and they keep making more. And my mother, who's 91, tells me, this is wonderful. This is hope. This is progress. We could do more of this. Why aren't we? And then I started talking to her and I said, well, years ago, gardens were very popular in people's yards. Now they're hard to find because society's changed, but we still are all hungry. So why can't we go back to some of the retro? And one of the things I've always thought is there's a lot of people that are older who can't manage a garden, but they have a lot of land. And there are young families who live in an apartment. They could take care of the garden and they could share it together. So there's ways on every level that we could change things like that just by brainstorming and agreeing to work together instead of be at each other's throats and turning everything into a competition instead of a collaboration. Because food is a basic.
Yeah.
And that's a great one that you mentioned. Housing is another one. I know I went home this summer and my mother told me about this project, and I've been watching it in my hometown, where several different groups in the community decided there were going to be too many people without a home and it was getting too cold. And because of the pandemic, there wasn't enough spaces in what they already had. They were going to have to double or triple it to keep people safe. And so they decided they'd band together, and it was a miracle, and wonderful things have happened. They got a warehouse. The hospital donated a shower bus. Other people agreed to make some food. And now the place is full, but safely full. During the pandemic, when people would have died if they would have been outside,
Yeah.
they're not dead. Very much alive. And now they're actually, people are able to go in and actually job train them because they have somewhere to be instead of wandering the streets all day. So it has changed overnight. It solved multiple problems in one shot because
Wow.
people all together decided, well, I could do this one thing. If we could get someone to do that thing, instead of putting all the pressure, government, you solve it, we're just going to sit here and pay taxes. This is a different way to think. And a lot of it has to do with putting our money and our effort and our time where our mouth is and our heart is.
That's a beautiful picture. Absolutely doable. And thank you for saying that, somebody could do one thing. Because if I think of taking a project on, that I want that to come to life, do I have to run it all? And if not, should I just let it go and forget about it? What if I can invite other people to engage with me, like you're saying, to do the one little thing? Each of us has unique abilities, and maybe those are making sure kids do get fed at a school, or maybe it is creating the food chain of distribution. Maybe it's changing that food distribution change. I know that farmers in India are working towards regaining their own strength and the ability to control that food chain versus some distribution company. So there are things that we can do, and to spark an idea, to build a vision and a dream for yourself is the best place to start. And you and I do that with people all the time. And so, to invite people into this conversation, and to consider that these systems might be old and needs some revitalization from the ground up with the little ideas that each of us has, could we revitalize the world we live in?
And I think it's cool that as we talk, we come up with the examples that are all around us. There is
Yeah.
good news out there. It's not all doom and gloom,
Right.
but it's what we focus on. And I think of how did many businesses and nonprofits start in the first place? They had a dream, they had a vision of how they could make something better,
Yeah.
either in a product or a service. And now all of us have had time, whether we wanted it or not, to reflect more than usual and to notice our neighbor instead of just drive to work and that's our little life and drive home. It's changed dramatically already. We both have a mutual friend who, on her own time as a volunteer, goes out into parks in the middle of the winter to have a place where kids can be outside and play and learn things at the same time. And they do a service project once a month. These little children, and they
Yeah.
pick it, they organize it, they do it. And it's things like that that give great pause to people saying it'll never work. Well, it is working on a small basis, and in some places large. Chef Andre has a huge thing that he's done the last few years, feeding literally tens of thousands of people when there's a disaster. And what he did a few weeks ago is he fed the National Guard troops that were in DC because most of the restaurants were closed. They had a really hard time getting enough to eat. And so he invited the community to participate by helping fund the meals for the National Guard. And a lot of people would poo-poo that. And since I live close, I know how hard it is if everything's locked down and you're out there standing in the cold all day, getting yelled and screamed at by a lot of people in a very difficult situation, which you did not create. And here's this kind person who thinks of a practical need. They need to eat.
Yeah.
Let's work on that picture right now. The other stuff, more complicated, we can deal with later, but we can feed these people. We have the means, we just need some help.
Right.
And they got it.
And that's a wonderful way to end this video, because he's somebody that was able to coordinate distribution on a large scale. And that was the old model, and it worked great for this. And in some places it's going to work. But it's also many of us that could come together with little ideas to create some new avenues to help people. And so thank you for your time, and thank you for watching this video. I have it on my phone, so I have a feeling that it's not going to come up in the gallery view with us side by side. It'll just be the person speaking, but we were both here. If you found value in this video, then please share it. Please share it with your family or friends. There's a lot of people struggling out there. And so our hope is that you will find the way to make a new view, a new shift, a new perspective, where you know that there's something beyond all of the chaos that we're dealing with at this time. And that there's something to be hopeful for, and something to dream about and vision about. And I will put our websites in the below this video. If you have interest or you need some support, then reach out to us. And we will come back again and visit on some other topics, and hope to see you there. So in the meantime, take care and know that there is greener grasses on the other side of the hill.